folks, here we are again. It's been a while since we had a chance to sit down and talk like this, but Star Trek has once again delivered us to some pure, unmatched garbage, and I just have to talk about it. Let's be clear, this movie, Star Trek Section 31, is not as bad as Star Trek Picard Season 2. I don't know if anything ever could be, but it's still really, really bad. And I don't think anyone is surprised by this. This was a movie that nobody wanted to see, that seemingly nobody wanted to make, and that Paramount certainly didn't want you to see if their little sneaky drop on streaming is any indication. This project was doomed to failure. But you know what? I love failure. Who doesn't love a bit of failure now and then? I think in this time of division, it's nice that we can all come together sometimes and collectively agree. That was shite.
I've been in close quarters with Zep for a week.
Okay, so you're into mecha boom boom. Lots of humans, huh? No shame.
It feeds me. Such pure, raw shite. It takes a special kind of failure to get an Academy Award-winning actress to say the words mecha boom boom. How did we get here? What magical convergence of stars led us to mecha boom boom? I'm not mad at Section 31. I love it. Such pure garbage should be treasured. It should be studied. And what am I if not a connoisseur of crap? Let's do this thing. Section 31 was first announced as a limited-run TV series back in 2019, having entered production the year before. That's right, this bad boy has been in development for 7 years. During that period, the project has evolved from a limited series to a full continuing series with multiple seasons greenlit to a direct-to-streaming movie. And let me tell you, you can tell, because someone forgot to cut out the episode titles from the movie. The reason the movie exists is quite simple, and the reason why they kept hanging on to the idea through 7 years of production hell. Michelle Yeoh. Back in Star Trek Discovery Season 1, they cast Michelle Yeoh in a bit part for the first 2 episodes as Captain Philippa Georgiou, a character who dies in the second episode to propel the rest of the season's plot. They later brought her back as a mirror universe version of the same character who was the evil empress of a fascist space empire. Now, Michelle Yeoh was already famous in 2017, but in the years since, her star has gone supernova, especially after her first Oscar win for her role in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Unintentionally, they had cast an Oscar-winning actress who'd become one of the most recognisable people in the world into a bit part in their show. The announcement of the show becoming a movie happened to come just a few months after her Oscar win. And listen, it seems like Michelle Yeoh really loves playing this fascist empress, so they would be silly not to cash in. But at the same time, with that very description, you might see why Philippa Georgiou is not a very good pick for main character of any movie, let alone a Star Trek movie. Thus we have the other side of the puzzle, Section 31, the black ops side of the Federation in Star Trek. That's a gross oversimplification of what they were when they were originally introduced, but it's what they are now in current Star Trek. They recruited Georgiou in Season 2 of Discovery, and ever since then, this show/movie has been in the works, because black ops are cool, right? The kids love the Call of Duties. That's how this project came into existence, not because anyone had a particularly good idea of what to do with it, but because, well, we've got Michelle Yeoh and we should probably do something with her. A cold and calculated business decision, and wouldn't you know it, when that's the basis for your movie, the movie comes out kinda shit. It's hard to know where to begin with Section 31 because it's one of those wonderful projects where absolutely every single thing has something wrong with it, but I suppose the simplest place to start is with the plot. The plot of Section 31 is a house of cards made of coincidences and contrivances. It's not incoherent, you can follow along with what's happening, but the entire time you're likely to be yelling at the screen about things that don't make sense, or are so obvious that you can actually guess the next line that's going to be said. The plot of Section 31 is very cleanly split into episodes because it's a TV show that they hastily strapped together later into a movie. In episode 1, we're introduced to the team, to Philippa Georgiou and her weird space flower nightclub, and introduce the tension of the movie, which is a super weapon of Philippa Georgiou's own creation called the Godsend, which apparently has the power to wipe out an entire quadrant of the universe. In episode 2, the team gets stranded on the dramatic environmental explosions planet and discover that someone on their team is a mole and they have to try and figure out who it is. And then in episode 3, they all come together to stop the bad guy from doing a bad thing. Okay, there is an explanation for what he's doing, but it's not going to make sense until I get into more detail, and the more detail I get into, the less sense everything is going to make. To understand episode 3, we have to try and understand San, my best friend. We open episode 1 on a flashback to the day Philippa became emperor, which was apparently some sort of Hunger Games bloodsport deal. And the final step of the challenge was to kill her family, which she does, including her small boy little brother, but she's very sad about it, so you know she's a redeemable character. We also learn that her final competitor in this contest was a guy called San, and they loved each other, but he wasn't man enough to kill his entire family, so now he gets to live the rest of his life as her slave. So later on, when a weird masked figure shows up and tries to steal the godsend and there's a mystery around who it could be, your obvious first guess is that it must be this San guy, the only other character we've introduced who it could be, and who has a personal grudge against Philippa for very obvious reasons, and lo and behold, that guess is correct. Except, even though that guess is correct, it doesn't make any sense, because Giorgio is now 70 years in the future from when she started thanks to the time travel shenanigans of Discovery Season 3, and we know that thanks to the baffling presence of Rachel Garrett, soon to be captain of the Enterprise C. In Giorgio's time period, there wasn't even an Enterprise A yet, and we know that the Prime and Mirror Universe timelines are in sync, because that's why Giorgio couldn't stay in the far future of Discovery Season 3, because her atoms were out of phase, or whatever bullshit David Cronenberg was on about. I honestly do not remember the details. The point is, how is San here alive, the same age as Giorgio, and how does he know where and when she is in an alternate universe to his own 70 years in the future? Shockingly, none of this is ever addressed by the movie, but it gets even more convoluted than this because when Section 31 comes to recruit her for this mission, they have no idea that she has a personal connection to the mission because they don't even know what the thing they're after is until she tells them what it is. What happened is, this random other guy from the Mirror Universe happened to find a spot between two space clouds that opens a portal between universes. He stole the godsend from the weapons depot where it was being kept and took it to the Prime Universe to sell it and live off the proceeds. He wasn't planning to sell it to someone in the Prime Universe though, he was planning to sell it to someone from the Mirror Universe who was supposed to also come through the portal and meet him here on Giorgio's space flower. We can assume that this other person was San, although that's never actually made explicit. Anyway, when the team interferes with the meeting and tries to take the godsend, San shows up in his ghost suit that he nicked off one of those guys in the New Vegas DLC to steal it back, which he does. So San now has the godsend, and his plan is to take it back to the Mirror Universe, where he's then going to tell everyone about the Cloud Portal and lead the Terran Empire into the Prime Universe to conquer it because their fascist practices have led to environmental failures and resource shortages in their own universe. Now you might be thinking, but Kyle, that plan doesn't seem to have anything to do with the godsend, and that's because you're a smart person who understands how things work. No, as far as I can tell, the godsend is completely unnecessary to San's plan. In the climax, they're trying to stop San from returning to the Mirror Universe so that he doesn't tell them about the portal. The portal that he must have already known about before he went through it, so I'm not sure why he didn't bring the army the first time around. The threat isn't that he's going to use the godsend, because he actually can. It's tied to Giorgio's DNA, so she's the only one who can activate it. The entire drama of the first episode has no relation to the drama of the third episode, except these aren't actually episodes, this is a movie, remember? San's motivation for doing all of this is that he hates Giorgio. In fact, in another flashback scene, we see him fake his death with the same poison she used to kill her family, while telling her that she's become an evil monster who took an already evil empire and made it eviler. So to atone for that, his plan isn't to kill her in revenge, it's to take over the evil empire and make it even eviler. This is a fucking mess. And that's the plot of this movie. Things that don't really make sense stacked on top of other things that don't really make sense. It's nonsense all the way down. This isn't plot holes because there's not enough of a coherent plot for the holes to register as holes. It's nothing but hole. For another fun example, when they're all stranded on the explosion planet, they want to send an SOS message from the nearby relay station, but it's been sabotaged. An important component is missing, presumably by the saboteur, so they all go searching for him. Then, once they've all left the room, the saboteur sends a message from the station, assumedly because he had the missing part and put it back in again. Except that he didn't, because once the saboteur has been caught and dealt with, the boss man pulls the missing piece out of a nearby cupboard because he was actually the one who took out the missing piece. Why? I have no idea. I don't know why he did it, what tactical advantage cutting off communication gave him, or how the saboteur managed to send a message without having that missing piece. It's an entirely pointless dilemma with confusing results, but it feels kind of petty to even bring that up because it ultimately doesn't matter to the overarching plot of the film at all. It's a pointless side tangent that makes up the middle of the movie and then we all just move on. Okay, so the plot makes no sense. That's the foundational problem. What makes the film so unbearable to watch on a minute-to-minute basis is the characters and the dialogue. Section 31 is supposed to be Star Trek's version of Guardians of the Galaxy or Suicide Squad, a team of wacky and weird misfits who come together and save the day despite their differences. The only issue is that every character is written like a 40-year-old man's idea of what the kids think is cool and witty 7 years ago. No shade though.
And deep down in that pure little heart, you're actually a chaos goblin, aren't you?
My goodness, do you remember Goblin Mode? That was a relevant reference for what, 2 months? Anyway, let's meet our team, shall we? Of course, first and foremost, we have the Genocidal Emperor, who needs no introduction. But going around the room, we have Team Captain Yeoh. He's our Rick Flag, the gruff and tough leader who does what needs to be done and doesn't take no shit from anyone. He doesn't really do much other than nick that battery, but he is an augment from the Eugenics Wars, so he's also from a different time period and also just happens to be around now, but that's fine. We have Quasi, a shapeshifter who only shifts shape twice in the whole movie, and his whole deal is that he waffles. That's his endearing character trait.
Well, life is just branching possibilities. You know, they bloom and blossom in any way you can imagine. For example, I could be intimidated by you right now. I mean, after all, you've murdered so many people. And you seem to be staring right into my soul.
We have Zeph, a guy in a mech suit who appears to be addicted to the mech suit or something. It doesn't matter. He's our Captain Boomerang. He's here to be Australian and do funny bits.
Yeah, hi. Quick question. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's just a quick one. Is it Godsend or God's End? Godsend or God's End?
I don't hear a difference in what you're saying.
Really? Really? Godsend?
We have Fuzz, who's a sentient microbe piloting a robot that looks like a Vulcan, doing certainly an attempt at an Irish accent.
I'm reciting the names of me hatchlings. Since one of you is going to murder me, I'm never going to meet him, but at least I can honor them one by one.
Fuzz is the traitor, and his deal is to act like a maniacal supervillain and cackle like an evil witch. I guess he's the Team Krang? We have Mel, she's already dead. Guess she's the Team Slipknot. And finally we have Rachel Garrett, the Starfleet liaison, who's here to make sure that everything in this off-the-book Black Ops operation is done by the book, dang it. Until it isn't, because her arc across this movie is to embrace being a Chaos Goblin.
This is chaos, Garrett. You know you love it, Maybe let it in, make out with it a little. It's why Starfleet put you here.
Chaos is my friends with benefits.
Suffice it to say, this entire cast of characters sucks. The only one I even sort of remotely like is Rachel Garrett, and that's probably only because she's riding on the coattails of one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever made. But she's the only one on the team who acts even remotely like a professional that I would trust with this sort of mission. That is until she starts singing little songs about being a Chaos Goblin. The rest of them are so shallow that a one-sentence description really does encompass the entirety of them and their relevance to the movie. After all, this is the Michelle Yeoh vehicle, so none of these other characters really matter all that much or can take up too much of the screen time. Michelle Yeoh gets to hog all of the truly awful zingers to herself. The movie seems to assume that if you stick a bunch of weird characters together in a room and just have them talk, that's a recipe for instant success. It's like a parody of what people get annoyed at the Marvel movies for doing, but this movie wishes it was as 10th as witty as even the least entertaining Marvel movie. The thing that makes Guardians of the Galaxy or the good Suicide Squad movie good isn't just that they're funny, it's that the characters have some actual heart and depth to them. The crew of Section 31 are as deep as rice paper. When Zeph ends up dead, I couldn't care less because he's done nothing in the movie except make really terrible quips. He's not done anything to convince me that he's a man worth caring about, so when he dies, I don't care. When Giorgio and Captain Name I've already forgotten managed to make it off the ship at the last minute, I'm not celebrating. If anything, I wanted them to die because I actively don't like them. And the root of that really is Giorgio, a truly awful pick as focal point character, especially with how much the movie tries to turn her into something that she was never supposed to be and never could be. A sympathetic character. The problems with Giorgio run deeper than this movie because they also go back into 3 seasons of Discovery. I've never liked her, I've never sympathised with her, and she made every episode of that show actively worse by being in it. What the show and movie want to try and do with Giorgio is make some kind of point about how no one is beyond redemption. Not even super evil space Hitler. But the problem with the setup of that is that she's super evil space Hitler. She blows up planets for fun, she eats sentient beings. She's so comically and exaggeratedly evil that the very idea that she could even conceptualize of basic morality is laughable, let alone trying to draw up sympathy when she's forced to kill her childhood love that she tortured and made a slave of for 30 years. Apparently 2 years with the Discovery crew turned her into a big softie who doesn't like murder anymore. Although maybe more accurately, she just doesn't like indiscriminate murder anymore. She's still totally fine with murder and even enjoys doing it. It just has to be for the right reasons this time. I believe in redemption. I do. I believe that people can change their ways and learn from their mistakes. I love a good redemption arc, and I think even in real life a redemption arc can be a powerful message. Say, for a purely hypothetical example, that a lot of people recently voted a fascist into public office. In this purely hypothetical example, there's going to be a lot of people who realise what they've done and realise what a terrible mistake they've made. And I don't think we should just give up on these people. They made a mistake, a very big mistake, but as long as they're sincere in their regret, then they should be given a second chance to atone for that. But you know who shouldn't be given a second chance? Hitler! Now, maybe I'm just a heartless bastard, but I don't really care if the genocidal dictator has a change of heart. If she wants to atone for her sins, then she can spend the rest of her life picking garbage out of the ocean or something. Not joining the Special Forces Black Ops operation where she has freedom and authority to do whatever she wants and murder anyone. That's ridiculous. A few years ago, I made a video about Section 31, the organisation, not the movie, obviously. And the core thesis of that video was that modern Star Trek doesn't just misunderstand the organisation, it does active harm to the entire franchise through that misunderstanding. The message of their inclusion in Discovery, and now this, is that they cross a line, do immoral things, but they do it all for the greater good and are ultimately necessary to the survival of the Federation. That is a dangerous and misguided message. This idea of the Federation and all its perfection and all of its beauty is wonderful, except the light can only exist with shadow. And who are the people in the shadow who have to do the work to keep the light present? That is obviously a very relevant topic now. This is a fundamentally incurious argument. It's essentially taking what Salon says back in DS9 at face value without examining anything that he actually does, and if it does anything to sustain the Federation, or if, in fact, it just makes everything worse. He is right about it being a very relevant topic, obviously, but not for the reasons he seems to think. Without rehashing the entire video again, Section 31 is analogous to the CIA, and they use all of the same justifications for their actions. Section 31, back in Deep Space Nine, is a critique of the CIA and the ends justify the means arguments that they make. And the end of Deep Space Nine takes a very clear stance. Organizations like this have no place in an optimistic vision of the future. Section 31 in Discovery, and now this movie, are still analogous to the CIA, except now we side with Sloan, that the ends do justify the means, and ethics and morality just get in the way of doing what's necessary to save the world from itself. Sometimes you need a monster to fight a monster. For example, let's talk about the torture scene. After they capture this random dude, we get a scene where Giorgio and Captain Bland torture him to get more information, and this scene is, bafflingly, played for Hux.
Regina under Philippa Giorgio, Augustus Euponius Centaurus.
Cool. So come with fries. That was good.
We've known for decades at this point that torture is not an effective way to get useful information out of someone. That torture is actually a cruel and unethical thing to do that provides no greater benefit than just asking someone normally, and does in fact lead to more false information.
Torture has never been a reliable means of extracting information. It is ultimately self-defeating as a means of control. One wonders that it's still practiced.
Section 31 not only accepts torture completely at face value, it presents it as kinda cool, badass, something we can all have a joke about, because this guy, he kinda deserves it, doesn't he? He's a criminal. Not like the criminal who's doing the torturing and loving doing it, that's fine, because it's all for the greater good. It's a completely outdated Fox News idea of how the world works, that literally anything is justified as long as you say you're doing it in service of national security. Light can't exist without shadow sounds true enough as a bit of folksy wisdom, but that doesn't make it actually true. Have you ever had a scroll through the Wikipedia article on CIA controversies? I'm not sure how you can argue that even half the shit they do can be justified, or in any way helps the regular people of the United States. Suicide Squad, even the bad one, understood the very basic idea that the Suicide Squad is not a net positive in the world. Amanda Waller is the very obvious villain of both movies. Meanwhile, Section 31 has Jamie Lee Curtis pop up to do some bits about how wacky and crazy this team is, but gosh darn it, she just can't stay mad at them. Section 31 treats all of this with a level of total vapidness that it's clear that they don't have any intention of making any point at all. But that vapidness is still making one. It's a completely placid endorsement of everything intelligence agencies do and say. Well, I don't agree, and this idea that the Federation needs a shadowy underbelly to do all the dark shit is completely contrary to everything that Star Trek is supposed to stand for as a sci-fi property. The reason the movie failed so spectacularly is because of the terrible plot and the truly painful dialogue. But this stuff is the reason that I'm glad it's a failure. Because I really, truly hope that Section 31 will die along with this movie and we'll never have to hear from them or their terrible philosophies ever again. Let it burn. Let it all burn. So at the end of the day, I guess I do recommend watching Section 31. It is truly tremendously bad in such a raw, pure way that should be savoured. Just please don't make another one. Thank you for watching, and a very special thank you to my wonderful patrons for your continued support. If you'd like to see your name up here, or just support the things that I do, then please consider signing up. It would mean a lot to me. As well as a like, comment, share, subscribe, and bell. To see my original Section 31 video, you can find that up here. It's one of my earlier videos, so I personally hate it now, but you might still like it. Or for something more recent, here's a video about that weird short film where a CGI Kirk and Spock hold hands. It's a trip.